Main character syndrome. Is there anything more notorious? Prepare for a tale of one player throwing repeated hissy fits when he is not the center of everyone's attention. But first, sponsor time. Charge your particle cannons, prime your plasma engines, and prepare your synaptic relays for the D&D science fiction conversion that you have been waiting for. Because Penny Dragon Games have just launched Waystar, and you can get a print copy of the adventure book for free if you back now. Waystar is a new tabletop role-playing game based on familiar 5e rules, so you can hit the upper decks running. The Kickstarter includes a core rulebook, a creature codex with over 100 monsters, and a galactic setting with everything you need to get your game out of this world. The best part? If you back a physical tier in the first 72 hours, you will receive a free PDF and print copy of Steal the Stars, a space heist adventure set in the world of Waystar. And we haven't even gotten to the Fabric Star maps, space battle card decks, galactic dice sets, or Space Monkey plushie. You heard that right, Wrench the Space Monkey is coming in hot. And with comics, novels, and more content that you can shake a shadow saber at in the works, you will never run out of source material to inspire your games. There's no such thing as going too far with Waystar. Back Waystar now. I've had this story for a while, and I, along with a couple others in the group, still have a laugh over the absolute fuckery that what I'm about to tell you was every so often. I'm currently in a game where everyone just vibes really well together. All the players are great, the DM is great, every session is entertaining, etc. However, we had this one player in the beginning. I don't know if he could be counted as a problem player. I don't know if he acts enough to really say. Plus, I think that would have been for our DM to decide anyways. All I do know is that I, as well as the others, found him particularly annoying. Some more than others. I also may be a bit biased since I feel a lot of the animosity and tension was placed between me and this person. But I do know for a fact that I was not the only one who felt this way. At first, everything was fine. We were all getting to know each other, the usual. Everyone else had a general character idea in mind. This person, though, was constantly changing things around, even up until they left. But this wasn't the issue. We would all roll with whatever he thought he was going to play whenever we all hung out, since we did talk a few times in between session 0 and 1, and we would often talk about our characters. From what I remember, this guy was going to play an artificer, but then flipped back and forth between artificer and wizard. He finally settled on wizard, but again, kept switching subclasses. This wasn't much of a problem. Again, just something to note. He was cool at first, just indecisive. However, sometime after session 0, when he had decided on playing a wizard, he started to act all high and mighty. He would do it to everyone, and at first came off as jokes. Jokes that got old really fast, but it was all tolerable. Though he kept getting more and more arrogant, and pretty fast, within a really short amount of time, he was cutting people off, trying to make a lot of the conversations all about him, etc. Even still, at this point, it was still somewhat tolerable. Up until he started getting pretty forceful with these aforementioned jokes. He suddenly started targeting me a lot more than the others and would become so overbearing with them that the moment I would even attempt to mention anything about my character, he would cut me off. They were all along the lines of, quote, "Wizards are better than this because XYZ, which is fine. I know wizards are the best class in the game, and sure, it's funny to joke about, I guess. But the problem arose because he became so adamant about talking over me under the guise of, I'm just joking. It was so bad to where I could hardly even speak in calls if I was going to try and talk about anything character related. I almost left the game because of how intense it was, but then a few conversations were had. I was still a little upset, but it wasn't anything I couldn't get over. I will say, however, the apology I received from him was very melodramatic and self-righteous, I guess, for lack of better terminology. However, I did try my best to move past it, as I had opened up about some anxieties I have in general during my conversation with this person. They mentioned they could relate, so I thought that with some time, all would be forgiven. Nope. LMAO. Again, keeping on theme. At first, this person's behavior was tolerable, but for the first month or two worth of sessions, it slowly became worse and worse for everyone at the table. This player was arrogant and self-centered. Every session was almost entirely dominated by him and his character. To put it simply, he basically had a mild case of main character syndrome. He was also very hypocritical in several ways. The main ways I can remember was how he would take literally entire sessions, or close to it, all to himself. The entire session would be all about his character doing things, but he would complain if the rest of the party took too long to do something. On a similar note, he would get huffy if we took a long time to do something at all, even if that long time was just 10 minutes. Especially if it was silly or stupid, all because he wouldn't be having fun. Yet again, like I said, he would take entire sessions to do the most boring shit that only his character was involved in all the damn time. Basically, he would only be having fun if he was the center of attention, and if that wasn't the case, it was a problem. For example, there was one session where for about an hour the party was in a pet store goofing off. All of us, except for him of course, were having a blast. This hour came after 2 or so hours of being focused on his character's backstory and stuff. We were in a town that literally only existed in our DM's world because this player wanted it to. We wouldn't have even been there if it weren't for him. Anyways, this pet sequence even took as long as it did because of this player, who I forgot to mention, who would constantly metagame. He metagamed several times to reinsert himself into the situation. His character left the store multiple times, yet he would suddenly reappear when something interesting was happening between other characters. He also made his character examine a gaggle of weird fey lizards, which there was about 7 of them, and he had to get descriptions for each fucking one. He then proceeded to buy each, fucking lizard. But no, we took too long when in reality, his character's interactions within that store alone took as much time as the other 4 players combined. I should also elaborate, this isn't the only time this guy would metagame. Like, he would do it constantly. 2 characters having a nice moment that completely does not involve him, suddenly, poof, he's there, describing his weird-ass familiar in detail despite us already having a picture. This also happened often, but the most memorable instance of it for me was when my character was asking something, and I had asked the DM a question. This dude just cut me off and asked his own question after having just spent the entire session going over 3 fucking books. And then, when I stood my ground and asked the DM for my answer first, which would have been way quicker given the fact that this guy, no joke, had to spend an entire session listening to him ask the DM about a book. No. This player turns around and says, "Hey God, I asked a question," or something along those lines, in a very condescending way after he had cut me off. Again, he did most of these things to everyone, but he was particularly keen on doing them to me in a much more firm fashion, where it would be more subtle with everyone else. I'm still missing a lot, just because I'm so scatterbrained, but I will try to describe some more. He would also start whining if he did something that would result in a very obvious consequence, and then said obvious consequence happened. Example A. His character, who I'll talk about a bit more later, was a homebrew race. I think they're called Lalafell. Anyways, his wizard was shorter than a halfling, and also had a negative strength from what I can remember. For some reason, I can't actually remember if there even was one, this dude's character, who, for now, I will call Half Pint. He wanted our paladin's helmet, and we were all sitting at a table, eating breakfast, and our paladin's helmet was in his lap as he ate. Half Pint tried to grab it, he wasn't very stealthy, and then complained when he wasn't able to pull it from our paladin's hands after he grabbed it. And he just overall made a big fuss that he didn't get his way, trying to justify why his 2-foot-something negative strength wizard was not able to steal the fucking helmet, after rolling way too low to beat the paladin's perception, and then not being able to physically pull it from the paladin's grip. Example B. We were traveling on the road and noticed some strange creatures, which I'll refer to as AB. If any of my party members or DM are reading this, they get it. We stopped about 60 feet away from them as we were all sketched out. We were also aware that the AB were staring at us. Half Pint got his familiar, who I'll also talk about later, to grab his stick, fly over to this group of AB, and drop the stick on them to check if they were incorporeal. As the way we discovered them, and the fact that we were able to deduce that they were similar to gibbering mouthers, suggested that they may possibly be incorporeal. This was not the issue. The issue was that when these creatures, who were incredibly aware of our presence, started walking towards us as a result of having the stick dropped on them, Half Pint's players started throwing a full-on fit out of character. Like, how do they know it's us? And they didn't see that! And when I say they threw a fit, they threw a fit. They were the only other creatures on the road, and they had been staring at us. Those are the two biggest examples I can remember of him getting upset over very obvious consequences or not getting his way. But in terms of character, like I said, his character's whole shtick was, am small. And he did this in a way that was kind of weird. Like, he basically rode our barbarian around like his personal chariot. He was constantly, carry me, help me on the cart. Like, it just gave very low-key, carry me around like royalty, I'm too good to walk on my own vibes. It was just weird, but that's more of a personal thing, I suppose. However, his entire character was built around the, I need to be unique, my character is special trope. He was a homebrew race, and he made his entire personality, I'm a small dude. He was supposedly from the Feywild and belonged to some mysterious forgotten race or something, if I'm remembering correctly. To tie back into the hypocrisy mentioned earlier, he was constantly changing shit about his character, but could not stand when anyone else was decisive whatsoever. The real kicker, though, is that the DM had to tell him no to one of the traits he wanted to give his homebrew race. The trait was advantage against all types of magic and magical effects, which, for a guy who would act smarter than thou and has said he can't stand OP characters or power gaming, this was pretty ironic. He also basically completely disregarded how familiars, via the Find Familiar spell, works. The problem was not that he had a sentient, highly intelligent, weird, flying fey salamander thing, but rather that this thing was incorporeal, and was able to do basically whatever it wanted without consequence. But then the player would throw a fit if the DM said, no, it can't do that. A big reason why I think he got so pissy near the end of his time with us is because he wanted his character to be unique and special compared to everyone else. But when anyone else had unique characters and Half Pint was not the main attraction, he couldn't handle it. Another thing too, it was made very clear from the start that this game was casual and fun. Nothing too serious in the grand scheme of things. This guy, however, was a total hard ass about timing and would throw a tantrum if we had to skip sessions. Like, he literally treated it as if it was some paid event that he had to drive an hour both ways to get to. I also want to elaborate more on my personal experiences with him. Again, he was similar towards everyone, but he was particularly rude to me. At first, he would message me casual questions about my character. He would talk to me like I was dumb a little bit, but he would do that to everyone, and in the beginning, he was relatively friendly. However, after the things I mentioned way earlier, this bullshit was amplified towards me specifically. He would speak to everyone like they were dumb, but would speak down to me like I was a complete fucking idiot all the time. The difference was very obvious to everyone. Let's just put it that way. Even still, I would ignore it. I would make my character interact positively with his, and she would speak to him as a fellow spellcaster. As our cleric was more of a frontline and support, while his wizard and my warlock both stayed in the back. I even helped this dude make some art for his character, but because I would be very blunt and matter of fact and would not just let him treat me like an idiot whenever he would attempt to, he eventually sent our DM a long-winded message claiming that I constantly had an attitude and basically played the victim and blamed me for him leaving. He also bitched about me being passive-aggressive when he was constantly being passive-aggressive in and out of games. He also bitched about our paladin. Ironically, the two people who didn't just let him do whatever he wanted is who he whined about. I hate bringing this type of shit up, but the way he acted towards me, including other conversations that I will not go into detail about for privacy's sake, makes it feel like because I was the only girl in the group, he treated me differently, and tried to treat me really, really nice and act like a white knight after he fucked up. But when I didn't tolerate his shit, he got particularly pissy towards me. Because again, even the paladin, who also didn't put up with his shit, he did not act nearly as volatile towards. The only difference that I don't share with any of the others is the fact that I'm the only girl, which again makes me feel like that's part of the reason why he was such a dick to me in particular. He overall just gave me slight r/nice guys vibes, but that's just my personal opinion and is not a solid fact, unlike everything else. Ever since he left, almost all of the tension that had been there vanished. And we all have way more fun as a group since we no longer have to pretend to be background characters in this dude's wannabe self-adventure. We have a new player who's absolutely amazing and fits so well with the group. Each session has been a blast and honestly, as we all can collectively agree, good riddance. TLDR, arrogant, self-centered player with mild main character syndrome threw a fit and left the game after he couldn't get his way, and make the game all about him. End post. D&D is not and never has been about being the one main character, provided, of course, there's a party of two or more, but this is technicality. Anyways, if you want more tales of RPG woe, click these funny boxes to my side. Till next time.